Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session. We're going to get started in just a minute. I would ask you to please mute your line if you're not already muted. And throughout the session, we will be using the chat box for Q&A, so feel free to enter your questions there. And we are recording this session, just to be aware. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Lamoth. Andrew?
Great, thank you. Thank you to all that have joined us today. My name is Andrew Lamoth, and I currently serve as Passport's Regional Director of Enterprise Applications, and I oversee the development of Passport's operating system. Passport is very excited to be sponsoring this session, and I'm happy to have the pleasure to introduce Jannette, Beneffe, and Michael Hahn as they present Citizen to Hero, the Power of Data. Jannette Beneffe is the Transportation Business Manager at DFW International Airport, where she is responsible for revenue management, project management, and business intelligence, and is a technical liaison for the implementation of IT business solutions for business users. Michael Hahn is a senior data integration developer and works on the business intelligence team at DFW as a data scientist. He graduated from Southern Methodist University with a master's degree in applied statistics and data analytics. This session will cover how DFW's Transportation Business Unit is shifting more toward a proactive approach using time series analysis and machine learning to anticipate customer needs. Please put your virtual hands together for Jannette and Michael.
Hi, thank you very much. We are very excited to be here, very honored to be here and to share with you some of the things that we have been working on at DFW Airport. And also would like to introduce Michael Hahn. He's one of our newest members of the DFW family. He's been with the airport for 2 years now.
Yeah, almost 2 years.
Yeah, so, but this is his first time with us at with IPMI, so we're excited about that to show some of the things that he's been working on with us.
All righty, let me pull up the presentation and get ready to go.
Okay, so we wanted to talk about kind of that citizen to hero, because there are different levels of analytics that most organizations have. With us, we do have the very advanced analysts or data that go more toward the data science side that knows all of the languages and everything. We do have, which is more our team, which is more of that middle ground, senior analysts involved with the data, also knows the business. But we're growing our citizen analyst team, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that and who they are and why we're doing it. So citizen analysts, as we see them, are frontline team members, people that are on the curbside, our quality agents that are on the buses, people who work in taxi dispatch, but people who really, really know their jobs really well and would really benefit from incorporating some of the data that the organization is collecting so that they can see their business a little differently, and it could really just improve their overall performance. And so if you look up a citizen analyst, if you Google it, these are two things that you will see immediately when you do that. And citizen analysts are not trained analysts, but they do have an analytical mind in how they see things and how they approach their work. And then if you talk about why an organization would want to build a citizen analyst team or interest, it's really to, if you look at your organization, many of them have that information really at the top level, right? For management to make all those decisions, to look at your KPIs and your performance and the things. But what we really want to do is bring that information down through the organization so that the people who could also benefit, like our frontline team, can have that and they can use it also. So we want to have a good flow of information throughout our organization. And just to give a little background, so our team specifically is made up of 4 people. We are responsible for knowing and supporting all of the other business sections that we have in parking. We have at least 8 other sections. We are kind of that jack of all trades, master of none type of group. But we are, responsible from knowing what's going on, all of the resources that are available to get information, and then also to know the tools, right, to help support everybody. And the great thing about our role in our team is that we do get to support everybody, to work with everyone and see what they're doing. And in doing that, we can easily see where processes could be improved, where something that they're doing in the field can be improved. And like right now, we're working on a project where some of our QAs, they still have the clipboard and filling out papers for inspections. We're doing away with that. We're actually building an app that they can do this mobilely, so to kind of cut down on some of that administrative time. But also, what we're doing is bringing all of that information and the metrics together so that we can really heighten that insight into our business from the day to day. So some of the benefits of expanding your analytical team and at least having those arms into other sections is, again, elevating the insight, but putting the data in the front line because they're the ones that work with it closest. They're the ones that are going to be able to tell you quickly that something is wrong. When you're managing a large, a very data-rich organization, it's really easy to kind of lose sight of some of that. But when you extend your team out, it really helps everything, and it helps your organization manage the overall business. And so we're doing this because it is expanding our resources and the insight to the day-to-day operation with minimal expense. Especially now, most of us are all working on a reduced budget. And so it's really important that we are able to still grow our team without, incurring too much on the expense side. So one of the things we wanted to share first before we got into anything is this is a problem that we were able to solve. A lot of what we do with analytics, I mean, we've all seen the main dashboards for KPIs and how we're measuring those bottom line type numbers. But what we really enjoy most is applying analytics to solve problems and to work together. And so this was a great example. We just wanted to share this with you for a few minutes. We actually have a corporate card program. It's a discount program with a lot of our local corporations. And what we were experiencing a few years ago was a number of errors. So a lot of our corporate partners were having problems exiting our plaza. The cards just weren't reading. And so we would have our cashiers and other team members out there helping some of these customers exit, after their travels. And of course, we were getting lots of complaints with that. But we were also very fortunate that the cashiers, what they would do every time they had a problem is they would email our team. And in those emails, they had documented the time, the lane, the customer name, the license plate number, all of the information that they could find about that customer. They documented it all, sent it through an email. And the manager for our corporate program came to us with a stack of emails and wanted us to see if there was something that we could do with it. And the first assumption that came from the team was that the card readers weren't working. And then the second thing is, well, we got a bad batch of cards, right? So that's got to be it. We got to replace them all. But after we did the analysis, what we found out was that both assumptions were incorrect. And so we took all those emails, we loaded them into Excel. There's the example of the Excel over to your right. And we created a visualization. We call it dossier. It's with MicroStrategy. So we created this dashboard. It really did take just 10 minutes to build. And the interesting thing about it is we went to go look at the number of cards that were in circulation and issued to all of our corporate partners. And so immediately you can see we've got about 4 or 5 partnerships that had a bulk of the cards that were in circulation. We had a local company that had about 15% of the cards. We had a travel agency that we work closely with that had just over 22%. And then we have another company at 19%. So this was good. It was just to see just the number of cards that we had and who we might have to reach out to. But then when we looked at the number of errors that we were experiencing, what we really found is that travel agency actually made up about 75% of the errors. So that immediately told us that it wasn't the card readers and it wasn't the cards, right? This was not a global error rate that we were seeing. There was something specific going on with that travel agency. But we didn't want to ignore the lanes. So, we did divide up all of the errors by all of our different lanes, our exit lanes, and we did go to IT to talk to them. Because, initially the thought was to have IT go and check over 80 exit lanes and all that equipment, and it was going to take hours to do. And we didn't really want that. So with this, we were able to meet with them and really just look at 6, 7 lanes to see how those lanes were reading all of the cards. But as all of you know, everybody interprets data differently, right? So as a business user, this is what we saw. But as an IT person, what he saw is that M at the beginning of all those addresses really means it's a man lane, that there's an attendant there. And so what he did instead was just go and look at the lanes over in the bottom right that had 1 error. Because most of our customers, once they have a bad experience, they're going to go to a lane where there's somebody there to help them. And so that's what they did, is they went to those one-off lanes to go and check to see if there was any issues going on there. And there wasn't. There was no problems. But the great thing about this is we were able to identify about a dozen customers. They're frequent flyers. They were the ones that were having most of the problems. And so we were able to re-educate everybody on how to use the cards and how to take care of the cards themselves. And so this was a really big win for us because the error rate, once we identified it and we met with all of our companies and partners, that error rate actually declined by 89%. And you can see there, and we still have a very low error rate. And it's just about educating our partners on how to use the program. So anyway, but that was just a really good example to show how all the teams, when you start talking and meeting with them and having those discussions about how important information is, how you can really win together. So as you start building any of your BI or any solution for your organization, it has to be managed. So we're going to talk about the program that we are working on, but once you build it, there has to be somebody there to manage it, right? To make sure that it's still going and keep an eye on everything. And so our model for our BI initiatives is really more of a self-service initiative. What we want is for all of our business users to have very little or no IT type of support. We want them to be independent and be able to do things on their own. Our IT group, DFW Airport is a very large organization, lots of information. So our IT team is really focused on the data governance and going and getting all of the information for us and securing it and making sure everything is available. But it's the business users that should be able to access all of the information, know where to go, and know how to use it. And so that's really just that premise for our whole model and how we're moving forward. And so I'm sorry, we do have a couple of questions before I get into this one, as far as, the citizen analysts team. And so just, there's a couple of polls. Awesome. So it does look like a majority of everybody is using some type of business intelligence tool, which is great.
75%.
75, yeah, awesome. Okay, and so we have one more question.
Go.
Yeah, so the next question is really about what you use.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Excel, everybody has access to it. It's a great tool. Looks like second is Power BI. I love it. Love Power BI, especially the integration with all of the other apps. And there's MicroStrategy. So this is great. Awesome. And then Tableau.
Cool.
Okay, thank you. So we just kind of wanted to see where everybody was at in your own journey with BI tools. And
Oops, sorry.
no, that's fine.
Apologies.
If we can go ahead and
Move
close
on.
the poll. Okay. All right. So in creating a citizen analyst team, what our goal is, I mean, our team, along with BI, has been pulling in more and more information as we go along, automating a lot of our processes, automating just a lot of the field processes. And it doesn't make sense for us to keep building and collecting all of this data when nobody's looking at it and nobody's sharing it, right, and using it. So we really need to educate our teams on how to access the information so that it can serve them. And so that's our citizen analyst team. And what we want is that there are at least one or two representatives in every team that can be that go-to person for them. We don't want to hold anybody back and have them wait for somebody, another person, another team, an analyst to give them all their data. They should be able to get it immediately. And so that's what's really driving everything that we're doing. And so we just wanted to give you some of our lessons learned on what we have done over the last few years. And that if this is something that you want for your organization, you definitely need to find a champion or champions, several people to help lead and organize those efforts for you. You definitely want to look at what your resources are internally and externally. We're very fortunate right now. DFW uses MicroStrategy as their primary enterprise solution. However, we have recently purchased Tableau. So that is actually rolling out in the next month. And then we also have Power BI. The main goal there with IT is that they want to give all of their users options, right? So that they're all able to use what they're comfortable with and not hold anybody back. So we're really, really fortunate to be able to do that. To gain support with this, sometimes it can be a struggle, right? I mean, you heard in the keynote about talking about innovation and bringing up those ideas. Sometimes new ideas just aren't, people don't instantly gravitate toward them. Sometimes you need to kind of create that proof of concept, start with 2 or 3 people, do things that will help gain support and show them how important and how beneficial building and educating other people in your organization would be. Another thing we would definitely recommend, which is something that we did, is that we did sign up for people who wanted to be part of our citizen analyst team to everybody. We have over 200 employees in TBU. Just over 20 signed up. Just under 20 actually attended those classes. So you can cast a wide net, but just know that the people who are really passionate and start to grow and gravitate toward analytics will be there and they will shine. And which is why you don't want to limit who you involve, because we were really, really surprised at who was there and who really enjoyed it and kept asking for more as far as the learning and development. Which goes back to the next thing, is training. So when you train your staff, again, what we have found is that training is essential. When you're teaching them with Excel or with Excel, your PowerPoint, MicroStrategy, Power BI, everything, you want the training to be somewhat customized to your organization. You do not want to give them some canned training that talks about information they can find on Google or retail or restaurants, that type of thing, because it doesn't really mean anything to them. And what we found is that when we trained our team using our own data, they really enjoyed it. They got to see their business in a new way. And it really started to mean and resonate something to them. So when you do the training, try to make it customizable. Once we showed everybody the basics of how to create a report, where the information is, what's available, we actually asked them to bring in their own spreadsheets. Because what we wanted is for them to walk away from training with a usable product, a usable dashboard that they could go back to their team and show, something that they could build on as they move forward, right? And, Excel in itself can be complicated. A lot of us use Excel, and to a regular business user, you can open it up and it looks really nice, all the nice headers, the formatting, all the graphs and charts and stuff. But that's all really pretty for your business users, but it's actually very messy when you start to use Excel as a data source and you start to integrate that data with Power BI, with Tableau, MicroStrategy, or any other tool that you have. And so there is this level of training that needs to happen with some of your team to show them to create Excel and to start entering that information in a format that they could use going forward. So that's something else that our team was able to learn and pick up on, and they really did enjoy that. And so if you're wanting to encourage people on your team to kind of get their interest on being a citizen analyst, to try and test their hand at analytics, some of the benefits that we have seen is that pulling people together from different teams that wouldn't normally work together is awesome. They get to share their best practices, share what they're seeing out there in the field, whether it's in the plazas or on curbside, or what they're seeing with taxi dispatching. They also can be an extension of your own team and your own efforts. They're definitely there where everybody can support each other. But it definitely does elevate their skills and their knowledge. And it's a way for them to reinvent themselves. So, we're just getting into 2021. Lots of people are wondering how we can get focused and get re-energized for the year. We definitely had a long year in 2020. This is one of those ways that you can do that. It's just something that you can train in-house to your team and really get them excited again about what they're doing. And it can really transform how they see their business and how they're involved with the organization. And so you've heard me talk about our team. So our core analyst team is a team of 4. Then we have our BI team, which how many is on that team, Michael?
8 of
Maybe
us,
a dozen.
Maybe a dozen, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not too big as well.
Right. And so unfortunately, we have lots of tools, lots of dashboards, mobile dashboards, just such a rich amount of information, but we're really the only 4 or 5 that look at it right now. And so through this process of going through and educating all of the teams, that knowledge is actually going to expand to 26 people within our organization, which really is impactful when you just see that the growth of knowledge and skill that our department or TBU as a whole will have in the months to come. So we're really proud of this team. What's interesting about everybody is we are all so different. We all have different backgrounds. We have different roles within TBU. We all have different education levels. And so you never know who's actually going to rise and really gravitate toward analytics. And so, which is why we just opened it up to everybody. And it can definitely provide new opportunities for people. If they're looking for change in their own career path, data is it, right? When you can bring facts and bring more, contribute more to those team meetings, you will just start to elevate your overall contributions, which is amazing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael. Michael, again, has been with the organization for 2 years now. His team, he's earned and affectionately known as our cool data science guy. So Michael, like to take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Jannette. So this next section is going to go over the predictive modeling. So essentially, this is kind of like the next step as you build your citizen analyst team, and they're building these great reports. They're doing a lot of descriptive analytics, and now this is kind of going to that next further step, where you're going to predict what's happening next. So what's helpful is we're going to go walk through the data science lifecycle. So as Jannette kind of alluded earlier with the Excel and how it's great that you guys use it, it does come with some setbacks just because of like the formatting to make it more readable and more understandable. But as we load into a database, that kind of gets kind of tricky. But once we get over that hurdle and get the data in a nice format in the database, we go into the exploratory data analysis step. So then it's where we're prepping the data more, cleaning it a little bit in more detail, and then we throw into our data science model. And the idea is that you output into a nice dashboard and display. It's funny, it's 3 really simple steps, but each step is really, really deep and gets kind of intense as you go through it. So we'll just kind of dive into the first step, the exploratory data analysis step. You might see this referred to as EDA. So if you guys are looking at articles about data science and how do you actually do it, you might see this acronym thrown around, and they're just saying exploratory data analysis, which is just a really fancy term for data cleaning. And this is the longest kind of step in the data science development. This is kind of where you clean the data, fixing missing values. You also can get general statistics about your data set, such as like average transactions in the morning or the afternoon, distribution of unique values, things of that nature, really to understand how the data is behaving underneath the hood. And this is what's really beneficial to have that business knowledge. One of the projects I've been working on with Jannette's team is to produce this predictive model to count the number of transactions that come through the DFW Plaza. I only know the data from a pure numbers standpoint, but Jannette's team actually provided that context, and it's more of like a gut check because models are going to be inherently incorrect by some margin. But with that business knowledge and knowing how the business works, it helps kind of steer the ship a little bit better and kind of get to the right course. And that interaction between her and team has been very helpful as we've been developing this. So the next step is now you just do the fun stuff, or quote unquote fun stuff, is the data science modeling portion. So the first question you ask is, what is your problem statement? What kind of problem are you looking for? Or what kind of prediction output are you looking for? And there's usually two camps they fall into, is classification and regression. So you can kind of think of it like with classification is to see a transaction and you want to know what kind of bin or class product they fall into, like a long-term or short-term product, short-term Parker, terminal or express. You kind of want to get that's a classification problem. What is this transaction? Regression is more of like a specific number you're looking for. So like, what is the price of a specific that we should charge for Parkers, or how long do we expect this individual to stay at the plaza? Those kind of questions. And then with that, there's a subset between that where you do target and explanatory variable. So with the target is kind of your target, your predicted value. So it would be that price, that stay, what class does it fall in, what product does this fall in? That's your target. Your explanatory variable are just literally, as it says, explains the target. So it's like weather, time of day, the type of car they're driving, or where they park, when they park, those kind of things, even the day of the week, those kind of variables. And then after you get your problem statement, you kind of have an idea what model type you want to use. The next step is to, again, clean your data to fit within that model architecture. This can be done in the previous step with the EDA. It can kind of like mix and match. There's a lot of feedback loops between each step. But in this one, you kind of tailor your data to fit within your model. Specifically talking about making words into numbers. That's what one-time coding is. So instead of saying Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you represent Monday as a 1 and Tuesday as a 2, things like that. Then there's standardization. That's just kind of making sure that your data is uniform across the entire data set. And there's outlier handling. So like COVID was an outlier, obviously. It's a hugely disruptive force, but it's not business as normal. So how do you handle those situations? Those are kind of the questions you ask during this step. After you do that, then you just throw into the model and see what happens. Typically, when you do these kind of analysis or these projects, you split your data into a training and test data set. The idea behind that is to remove a part of the data set that the model has never, quote unquote, seen before, and then you train on your trained data set. So the driving force behind that is to see how the model would perform in a real situation. How does it perform when you see new data versus the data it's seen already? And after that, you do some cross-validation and model tuning. So in this step, you can think of Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, turning his gears, pulling some levers, and trying to make sure the parameters within the model and can accurately fit the data itself. And one of the questions that you have is, how do you measure success? How do you measure a good model? And the big part with that is, again, talking with those citizen analysts, the guys that know the data the best. How do you kind of fit this huge, crazy model into something that's actually applicable for the department? And the little weird, creepy old lady is me with my crystal ball. The ball is my data science model, and I hopefully predict success. So that's the idea there. So on the next step, Oh, sorry, I spoke. So then really the question is why predictive is important to parking. A big quote, I got this from Jannette, is knowing what happened is good, but knowing what to expect is better. So let's dive into the dashboard that I've created for them. This is all done in MicroStrategy. And you can see this huge drop, that's COVID, that's back in March. And as you look at our future, we are trending upwards. COVID being a huge world shaker, it's been kind of tricky to create these predictive models. And so as we are clicking out, you can actually go further and further out, and you see those yellow guardrails there. That's kind of our net that we're trying to capture the actual value with, and it does balloon out significantly. Just because COVID was so huge, it gets tough to predict really far out until we get some normal states. And kind of split it by products. So you can kind of see that generally all the products are trending upwards and behaving sort of the same. I always recommend if you want to predict outwards, you kind of aggregate upwards. So that's why monthly, you can do a little further out. With the daily, you can see kind of at a more granular level, the weekly seasonalities, that ups and downs, where you see the troughs, and then that being the weekend, and then the peak for employees specifically is the weekday. And then on the right there, you're circling, that is actually Thanksgiving. So it's pretty cool to have a model predict how behaviors are going to be, and then what it could potentially be for the coming holiday. And then with hourly, same idea. This gets a little harder when it goes down to this granularity level, because outliers are considered to be normal values because it's just so granular that it actually happened. And so really with this, you can kind of see the behaviors of the course of the day with all products, what it looks like. And I've been with this portion, I was actually speaking with Jannette's team a lot, kind of going back and forth, is my model following what you guys kind of expect to be? Because this data has been trained on post-COVID, so this is behavior after COVID. So still doing some gut checks with those business partners, because again, I only know the numbers, I see the data, but Jannette's team has the context. They actually know what these numbers represent. So on the next slide, we'll go a little bit deeper into the use case. So for this specifically, trying to predict predictions as it comes to the plaza is a very classic time series model, time series problem. And the model I used in our case is this open sourced Facebook profit algorithm that the Facebook data science team released, I think a few years ago. The idea behind the Facebook profit is that they were trying to predict the number of events that people would post on Facebook, which is really cool because they actually modeled holiday effects. So as the holidays get closer, more people post on Facebook, I want to do a party. So that kind of reflects with the airport, where as the holidays closer, people travel more. And so you can hard code dates, you can add other holidays that may occur. There's also change point dates. So change point dates are dates where the trend of the data may change significantly, such as like price changes at the airport or at the plaza. COVID, funny enough, you could almost treat it as a holiday if it were to happen again next year, hopefully not, but we listed it as a change point date in this model specifically.
Yeah, so there was a question really quick. They did ask about the black line.
Mm-hmm.
So the black line is actuals.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
and so our actuals are still landing in between our upper and lower bounds. So that gives us confidence in the model.
Mm-hmm. And there's ways to, so for those that really want to get the nitty gritty, the confidence interval of this model is 80%. So layman's terms, it just means that 80% of actual values will fall within those bounds. If you widen that bound up, the railings get larger, which is useful in some cases, but not useful in other. If it's capturing everything, it's going to be huge, right? So there's going to be a little bit of error as you decrease those bounds there. And so with Facebook Profit is an extension of your standard ARIMA model, which you may or may not have heard of. So ARIMA stands for Auto-Regressive Integrated Moving Average Model. Each part of those letter groupings actually represent a part of this equation here: trend, seasonality, and random noise. What's really cool with Facebook Profit is that they deliberately modeled holiday effects. So it's really cool. You can kind of tweak the sensitivities, how the data predictions affected by holidays. It's really, and it's also very approachable. So I recommend using Facebook Profit, at least for introductory time series. Then there's the option to do some additive versus multiplicative modeling. And so all that's really saying is on that equation you see there, you just switch the signs from a plus to a multiplication sign. The reasoning, when you would use one or the other, it really depends on the specific kind of problem. In our case, the product types, terminal Parkers or express Parkers. Multiplicative modeling essentially means that as your trend is increasing, as your values generally increase over time, the cyclical elements also increase, so it kind of funnels outwards if you were to look at it in a graph, which may indicate really strong increases in like purchases or whatnot. But there are other methods to really iron out whether or not you use additive and multiplicative, which is a whole nother topic for a time series introductory 101 class. And success, kind of alluded to this earlier, for this use case is this mean absolute percent error, which is just saying how far off are predicted values to actual values. And the model tries its best to reduce that error rate, and that's how you kind of measure success here. So with descriptive data science modeling, a lot of people think, oh, I want to see what happens next week or next year or whatnot. But there's another aspect, which I call descriptive data modeling. So you kind of compare predicted values that we have today with last year's. So this, what you're seeing here is our hourly level. And those black bars are actual values. So the very left side is last year's. As expected, the black bars are significantly larger than our orange predicted values. And that's just due to COVID. As you kind of move over to the right, there's last week and next week. So the changes over time seem to kind of decrease and we're stabilizing out a little bit. But as you saw earlier on the monthly level, as we're predicting way further out there, it's kind of gets tricky to know where are we heading? Where does it look like? So it's just still unknown at the moment. And then a little cherry on top with this dashboard that has all this fancy time series modeling. MicroStrategy has this really cool technology with hyperintelligence. So what this is a little card, or I would say a mini dashboard that kind of gives you information that you would have to look on the dashboard, click around and try to figure out. This card kind of brings it all to the front for the user. Instead of having to dig around on a dashboard, you have it right there in front of you. And they actually trademark this as zero-click analytics. All you gotta do is hover over the word and it pops up. And so we try to develop this so that you get the output very quickly in your hands. So if a terminal manager at the airport wants to know, I want to know how many Parkers are going to come at my terminal for today, and they can just pull this up, boom, they get the information right in front of their phone, and they can see what tomorrow looks like. So if they need to hire more, have more staffing on board, if there's a decrease, they can allocate resources more efficiently. And the flexibility with hyperintelligence is really nice because, like I mentioned before, you can get on your mobile phone. You can get it on, obviously, a MicroStrategy report. You can even get in emails. So say you're emailing some people out on the floor, trying to like, hey, what's Express look like today? And then as you're typing it up, the card will pop up to the side and say, hey, here you go. This is Express numbers. And then this also populates on your browser. So instead of having a group of data geeks crank these numbers out and have these information for you, and like next week, you got it right there in front of you in like 5 minutes, or 5 seconds, I should say. Alrighty, and now we'll open up to any questions. I think we're using the chat at the moment, and I'm unfamiliar with Zoom, so please forgive me if I'm unable to see it.
So I did see there was one question about sharing data.
Mm-hmm.
Well, about, I know there's some hesitation on sharing data when it's wrong, right? When that happens a lot. I will say that we did go through that quite a bit initially. And we still do, but the more that you communicate why the data is wrong and get everybody involved, the better your data will actually be as you move forward, because sometimes data is wrong because somebody typed in something wrong, flipped information around, wasn't consistent. Maybe the system hesitated, didn't get the data load, whatever that is. But the more that everybody's educated on all those nuances to managing your information, the easier it will be to manage it, because now you've actually expanded that responsibility and that understanding to everybody else. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, nicely said.
Yeah, and then there is one for you, I think.
Okay.
Michael, when developing models, how do you determine which machine learning approach is best for a particular problem? For instance, if you're working on a binary classification problem, how do you choose between logistic, regression, CVM, random forest, etc.?
Good question. It's tough to say. This is where there's a lot of tools on the market that does these for you, in the sense that they build these models really quickly and then you can compare them to one another. There are some tried and true, like widely regarded as like these are really good models, like XGBoost and I think like GBM and stuff like that. In order to actually know how it fits within your use case, there are certain metrics that you can kind of employ. With classification, there's like accuracy, precision, and recall, which all tailor to a specific problem statement. And really the only way I would say, that's at least I've done, is that you run a few models that you are confident in and see how they perform. And the ones that perform the best just with their base kind of parameters, that's when you start tweaking around a little bit more and start like, let's see if I can make this better, versus trying to tweak all of them at once. But yeah, there's that's for classification, is do that precision, recall, and accuracy comparison. With regression models, you can look at, I think they call it the mean absolute error, which is, the mean absolute error, I believe. I forgot. I can't think of the top of my head right now. But there are certain metrics that don't really mean much by themselves, but are used to compare across all models. So as tough as it to say, you got to run them all and see how they work. And there are, like I said, widely ones that are really good and some that are really bad. Logistic regression is kind of an old school thought. SVM and random forests are kind of like the new hotness, or relatively new hotness, that you might want to try first before going down that route. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. So Kim, are there any other questions, or I see we're out of time?
Yep, we just have one new one. Michael, what advice would you give to someone trying to break into data science in the parking and transportation industry?
Don't start with the craziest model. The rule of thumb, actually, when it comes, like when I was doing my studies at SMU, the simpler the model is, the better it is. Because if you can explain it, and then that means it's good, right? If you can't explain it, have no idea, that's where the whole like machine learning is a black box kind of comes in. You kind of trust the model versus actually knowing what's going on. So definitely start simple. This time series model that I've created, ARIMA, is a widely used model, and it's quite classic, as they would say. So definitely start with the smaller models. I wouldn't go into like random forest and XGBoost and neural networks and all that stuff, because you're gonna get overwhelmed. And I also read a lot of medium articles, like large, small, medium. Those have a lot of resources on there as well. It's kind of a curated articles, and then you can kind of, a lot of people talk about data science there, and they go through assumptions and things like that. Yeah, that's kind of where I would start, at least.
I don't see anything else coming into the chat unless anyone wants to put one in quickly. All right. Well, thank you to our panelists. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. Everyone, thank you for joining us. We have an open Zoom lounge coming up. You're more than welcome to pop in there and talk about anything you'd like to talk about. The link is in your program guide. And later this afternoon, we have our Spark sessions, which should be great. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope you have a great afternoon.